Anyway, let's get ourselves underway. So, welcome to Voices of Saanich and the Islands. And my name's Tex McLeod, and I'm the president of the Saanich North and the Islands Riding Association, which is Adam's Riding Association. Our job is to support him in his work, raise money for his election, and help build the community in support of his work. It's a tough job, and we appreciate the job that he's doing in it. This is part of a speaker series that we have run for almost 6 years now. And Linda, if you are listening, Grace was on the phone just now and she is saying she can't get in. Could you give her a hand? Grace is calling from Pender Island. I hope that she isn't the only one who can't get in.
Okay, will do. Thank
you very much. So I live on the Saanich Peninsula, which in many ways mirrors, it's the traditional territory of the Saanich people. And isn't it interesting that Saanich North and the islands, those islands, most of them offshore, were actually traditional territories of the bands here on the peninsula. So in many ways, Adam's riding mirrors the traditional territories of the Saanich people. Adam always says, if we look after this place, it will look after us, and appeals to us all to keep that in mind as we live and enjoy our lives here in this area. Joining us tonight is Professor Emeritus at McGill, Dr. David Bird. Professor Bird is, David was the director of the Avian Science and Conservation Center at McGill, specializing in raptors. David has edited and authored over 11 books. And when I first got in touch with David, he volunteered to do a session. I went to my bookcase and holy mackerel, I had 2 of his books on my shelf, unbeknownst to me, and they're favorites of mine. I love the way DK does their graphic images. David is the founder of a journal on unmanned aerial vehicles, which we would know as drones, and how they might interface and work with nature and monitoring. Lots of papers, lots of articles, festivals and shows. And if you want to know more about David, he has a great website called Ask Professor Bird. So David, thank you once again for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And we look forward to an evening of discussion around the Canada Jay as Canada's national bird. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction, Tex, and welcome to everyone aboard. I'm very sorry that BC has been going through a lot of suffering from an overabundance of rain. The only thing I can say we have down here is an overabundance of sunshine. And I'm not trying to rub it in. I do feel bad for you folks back home. We just missed it by about 2 weeks. Otherwise, we would have been stuck in Fernie. And I'm not even sure I'd be down here in Baja. You'll notice if you look at this title slide, the Canada Jay is Canada's national bird has 2 question marks after it. And that's on purpose because my goal tonight is to not only convince you that Canada should have a national bird, but that it should be the Canada Jay. We'll see if I succeed in doing that. And this is clearly showing my colors for the Canada Jay. So why should we even have a national bird? Well, bird watching is still one of the fastest growing hobbies in North America, and has especially gotten even more popular during the pandemic. It does, excuse me, I'm trying to get rid of this box. Here we go. There we go. does bring big bucks for our economy, for example, through the bird feeding industry. Birds themselves, they eat pests, they pollinate our plants and crops, they disperse seeds, their eggs and their meat. Yes, chickens are indeed birds. They feed us and their feathers keep us warm. They've helped us win wars. They've helped people, engineers, to design airplanes, for example. They've acted as courier pigeons during both World War I and II. They've acted as sentries on night duty to see if the enemy's coming and so on. And they're also, today, literally canaries in a coal mine. You look at that picture in the bottom, second from the left there, miners would take caged canaries down below so that the canaries would give them an early warning system if there was gas leaking out or something that could potentially harm the miners. But today, I use the word literally because the birds have already given us warnings about DDT and organochlorine pesticides and many other chemicals are out there. I'm not anti-chemical, but some are good, but some are bad. And then today, they are warning us about the effects of climate warming, and there are being all kinds of studies going on, coming out in scientific journals, showing the insidious effects of climate warming on bird populations. They also provide an intrinsic value. I mean, think about the number of writers and filmmakers, astronauts, composers, and so on and so forth that have been inspired by birds and their ability to fly. So I often believe this, that a world without birds would be both a biologically and an emotionally diminished one. And I feel that if we lose our birds, we lose ourselves. So why even have a national bird? Well, 106 out of 195 countries, with 21 more unofficial, and all the states and provinces have an official bird. Canada's got a national tree, maple tree, a mammal, the beaver, 2 sports, lacrosse and hockey, and even a horse, but no bird. I think that a national bird would help define who we are, just like our flag. And to give you a very good example, we only have to look to our neighbors to the south. They basically chose the bald eagle in 1789, often called the American eagle even today. And they revered it for its beauty and its fierceness. It also serves as the logo for the US Postal Service since 1970. And if you travel anywhere through the US, you'll see flags with bald eagles and all sorts of other symbols all over the country. Trained bald eagles are flown at the Indy 500, the World Series, the Super Bowl. If you look at that picture in the bottom right, you'll see that eagle has in his clutches Tom Brady. So you'll know who I was cheering for in the last Super Bowl, although I've grudgingly grown to like the guy as a quarterback. So in the terms of having a national bird, enter the Royal Canadian Geographical Society in 2015, and they decided to come up with the National Bird Project. And it wasn't to officially select a national bird for Canada. It was set up more to get people in Canada talking about it and to sort of engender some interest and so on. And what happened is that as soon as I heard about this contest, I remembered earlier efforts by other people to try and select a national bird that at the time was called the gray jay. But I had to do something about that. I couldn't not miss this opportunity to push at the time, the gray jay for our national bird. So I formed what was called then Team Gray Jay, now called Team Canada Jay. And I sent this poster designed by Joel Coutu of a birder in Quebec out to, it was in my signature for my emails and got things going. But I also wrote an essay for the website that had the contest on it, supporting the gray jay. At the time, I think it was about 13 good reasons why it would make a great national bird. And at the time, the Canada jay or gray jay was way down the list. I mean, I'm going to give you an idea of who sort of won the contest in the end. And on Team Gray Jay / Canada Jay, one of the big names that I managed to convince to join us, and he actually wrote a letter of support for the Canada Jay to the contest, Robert Bateman. We all know who he is, and he really strongly believes that this would be a great bird for a national bird for Canada. And then the John and Janet Foster, who are iconic Canadian wildlife filmmakers, also joined the team. They've always felt that this would be a great bird. And so they signed on, and they actually came up with something which I'm going to share with you soon about the reasons why this is a great bird. And so the contest sort of chugged along, and it was getting a lot of traction among Canadians and so on. But suddenly the TV show, the iconic Canadian TV show, 22 Minutes, decided to do some funny skits on this contest. And Kathy Jones, one of the big stars of that show, she was looking at the different birds, and when she heard about the gray jay, she said, "Well, I'm not a fan. There's hardly any meat on it." Now a loon, on the other hand, that's good eating. And anyway, when it got on to 22 Minutes, they did more than one skit on it. It really gave the contest some traction. So let's get into some of the reasons why the Canada Jay would be a great bird. And first off is the old real estate saying, location, location, location. If you take a look at this range map of the Canada Jay, the pink stuff is the range of the bird. And it practically fills our entire country with the exception of north of the tree line. And save for some incursions into Alaska and down through the Rocky Mountains and a little bit down into the northeastern states, this bird pretty much is found almost all of it in Canada. It's also a totally unique bird for Canada. It's not found in any other country in the world except the US, unlike the snowy owl and the common loon. I'm going to come back to those later. It's also, and this is really important, not an official bird for any other geographical entity. The common loon is Ontario's bird and Minnesota's bird. The snowy owl is Quebec's bird. I helped make it so with Cliff Lincoln. And the black-capped chickadee is not only the official bird of New Brunswick, but also the national or official bird from Maine and Massachusetts. So this is a unique bird we're looking at. And in 1965, when we decided to sort of create a Canadian flag, we did not elevate the flag of our most populous province, Ontario, to national status, nor did we take the fleur-de-lis of Quebec and elevate it. Could you imagine what would happen if Canadians had done that sort of thing? No, we chose something fresh and new. And that's one of my favorite expressions to describe the Canada Jay. And it's a flag that we're all very proud of. We love to see it being raised over Olympic events and sports events like World Hockey and so on. So also, when you think about the name of this bird, it was called the Canada Jay for about 150 to 200 years, and it erroneously got changed to the gray jay in 1957 by what was then called the AOU Checklist Committee. They're the folks that decide on what the birds in North America are going to be named and the Latin names and so on. And they lumped together the Oregon jay and the Canada jay, and at the time didn't like the idea of using geographical names, so they gave it a new name, the gray jay. But they broke some rules by doing this and so on. And there's a great article in Ontario Birds magazine in 2017 that describes the whole story about that. It's very complex, to be honest with you. The bird's also called the whiskey jack. A lot of Canadians in the Maritimes and here in British Columbia all think of the bird as being the whiskey jack. Has nothing to do with a popular beverage, but more on that a little later on. The Latin name for this bird has been, since time began, since they started doing Latin names for birds, is Parasaurus canadensis. So there's Canada again in the name. And the French name of the bird is Messager du Canada, which is a composite. Messager is a composite of chickadee and jay. So for those people who are disappointed that the black-capped chickadee isn't getting pushed as our national bird, at least you'll get a partial bit of chickadee in this bird if it gets chosen. And this is an illustration of what was then a Canada Jay for the Quebec City area when around the time when Carl Linnaeus was giving out the various Latin names to, and he gave the Latin name for this bird, Corvus canadensis. So it's been in Canada, it's been stamped all over this bird right from the beginning. And with no small thanks to this man, Dan Strickland, in 2018, he put together a huge argument and a proposal. And I was pleased to be part of that, along with several other guys, to the AOU Checklist Committee, basically arguing that they made a mistake and back in 1957. And never mind anything to do with wanting it to be our national bird. There was no politics involved. It was all basically science. So the bird is now once again called the Canada jay. And this was no easy feat for Dan because he had to do a lot of homework for this. The AOU Checklist Committee seldom makes changes like this, like admits they made an error and changes back something. So this was a big deal. Just so you know, Dan actually believes, because he knows this bird very well, he is basically our #1 expert on the Canada jay. And he actually believes that right now it's one species known as the Canada jay, but there are actually 3 different morphs across Canada. If you look at the bird on the bottom left there, the Oregon jay has much more of a black cap, and the bird Rocky Mountain jay is a bit washed out. And Dan will not be surprised that at some time in the future, the Canada jay on the coast of BC and down into the Rockies in the States will be split into 2 other species. So we end up with 3 sort of similar species, but Canada jay will still have that huge range from coast to coast in our country. And by the way, it's found in every province, every territory, not only just existing, but as a breeder, even Prince Edward Island. The bird also has very endearing qualities to embody the Canadian spirit. It's a member of the corvid or crow family. These are the jays, magpies, crows, and ravens. Arguably, in my book, the smartest birds on the planet. The parrot people might have something else to say about that, but I can give you some good arguments of why the corvids should get the nod there. And Canada jays actually have a brain to body ratio that's similar to dolphins and chimpanzees, both extremely smart animals and almost approaching what we have as humans. So these are smart birds. They're also, and this is not even in my latest essay on 18 reasons why it's a great bird for Canada, but it's a totally monogamous species, unlike the vast majority of cheating, promiscuous birds. Many of the songbirds that you see out there in your backyards or wherever you go bird watching, a lot of those songbirds cheat on their mates, and they're very promiscuous. But the Canada jays are not. In fact, they stay together year-round on their territory and very much remaining close to one another all the time. If you find the male, the female will be very close by. And they sometimes even perch together side by side while actually touching one another. How many of the guys in the audience can boast that they would be doing that even today? I mean, it's a really neat thing. It's a very loving thing that they do this. It's also a very friendly, trusting, and highly curious bird. It's not shy, as many of you know, to perch on your hand or your head, your ski pole or whatever, and take a handout. Don't get me wrong, they are opportunistic and they're looking for a handout, but they'll do it even if you don't have food on your body at the time. And this is the part where the Fosters, John and Janet Foster, really helped me sort of win the national debate we had in Ottawa during near the end of the contest. They told me that this bird likely greeted countless numbers of First Nations folks, settlers, miners, loggers, and trappers in the building of our great country, and long after all of the other birds had left for sunnier climes. These birds would be there right in the middle of winter when all the other birds had left. Yeah, looking for handouts, but they still were there. And here's just a few pictures for you to see just how sort of trusting and gentle these birds are. And look at the look in that little girl's face up there to the top, Erin Newman. I'm totally delighted. And look at the look in the lady down below her with the jay. That's my favorite picture, and also the one with on the notebook. Another argument is it's an extremely tough bird. Very, very hardy. It doesn't migrate south in the fall, as I've already told you. It's adapted to not only exist, but also breed in our harsh Canadian winters. And it can incubate its eggs at 30 below zero. That's a picture that Dan took there, and the bird is totally covered in snow. And they do this quite commonly. They start nesting very early in the winter. And they also have all sorts of adaptations to be able to withstand our Canadian winters. They've got these plumages that are fairly thick, and they can bring them down, fluff them down over their feet and their toes. And they also even have feathers that come down over their nares, their nostrils, to keep the cold air from coming in their bodies. Some other adaptations, they can undergo hypothermia at night to save energy. They're not alone in doing that, mind you, but they still can do it. And they'll sunbathe even on the coldest days, much like that guy in the middle down there who's sitting out there in the snow reading a novel in the middle of winter. And a really cute behavior of these birds to keep their nestlings warm is the females will for 1,000 times a day will go to the nest with their beaks and nest like jab at the nest to fluff it up and keep it all plumped up to keep the nestlings warm. But the coolest thing of all about Canada jays is that they have the ability, these glands inside their mouths, to secrete sticky saliva. And they take this saliva and they coat their various food items and they store them under the tree bark above the snow line. And then remember their locations. Now, if you take a blue jay, they store food too, but they store it under the detritus and so on in the ground. If they were to do that and had the kind of winter that the Canada jay had to face, then they wouldn't be able to find their food under the snow. There are some connections to our First Nations people, which I deem very important. It figures very strongly in First Nations folklore. The word whiskey jack itself was actually derived from the Cree word whiskakak. And this was something that Dan Strickland and Christian Artuso of the Canadian Wildlife Service and another guy who's a specialist in First Nations names, D.E. Pentland, at a Canadian university. This is what they believe where whiskey jack came from. A lot of other people have believed to this day that it basically is a variation of the name Wisagajak, which means a benevolent trickster and a cultural hero. It's hard to say whether who's really right about this. There's a lot of different First Nations tribes all across Canada, but by and large, the latest word is Wiskakak, is where the Cree word where this name whiskey jack came from. It's one of the very few English vernacular names for a North American bird species that's been borrowed from an indigenous language. And according to some sources, Great Canada jay is actually revered by First Nations as a good omen and a sentinel for danger in the forest. And that makes some good sense to me because blue jays are often regarded the same way because they always make warning calls when there's some sort of danger lurking in the forest. Mark Najawan, who's part of my team Canada Jay, didn't find it easy to find a First Nations person willing to serve on the team, but Mark came forward. He's a First Nations visual artist, a pen and ink specialist, and he did this amazing painting here showing a Canada jay nestle on the shoulder of a great Indian chief. And there are other religious connections. This is not an argument for them being National Bird of Canada, but if you take a quick look at this, or close look at this, this is a big tile floor at a cathedral in Ontario. And if you look at this picture right here, I'm going to blow it up for you right now. There it is on the left here. That is a pair of Canada jays, and that picture was derived or adapted from a photo by Dan Strickland here on the right. And this was this big tile floor is located in the Cathedral of the Transfiguration in Markham, Ontario. It was actually blessed by Pope John Paul II in 1984, not the floor, but the cathedral. And the artwork and the design for the mosaic was imagined by a man named Fabrizio Travisnuto and Helen Robin Barber. And the mosaic itself was actually fabricated and installed by Travisnuto Mosaics. And the themes of it, if you just look back here again at the picture here, are essentially the militant sheep, the Alpha and the Omega, the Celtic cross, our Lord's fish. And for Canadian content, Helen Roman Barber wanted the Canada jay, so Dan supplied the picture. The Canada jay is also a safe choice for a national bird It's not an endangered species, so it's not at a high risk of disappearing on us. I mean, could you imagine if we've chosen the whooping crane and then some terrible thing happened and wiped them all out and our national bird was gone? It's not a hunted species, and it's also, so therefore it's not shot by Canadians for any reason. Not everybody is against that idea. There are lots of national birds that are hunted, but the bufflehead would have been also not a bad choice for a national bird. It's found from coast to coast in every province and so on, but some people might object to the shooting part. The Canada jay is also not regarded as an obnoxious or a nuisance species, like the Canada goose. The Canada goose would have been chosen as our national bird over my dead body, to be honest with you. There's no way. I mean, I'm not against Canada geese. I love watching them fly over in their V-shaped skeins and the honking and everything. It gives me a very warm and fuzzy feeling. But I also have heard from a lot of people how much they don't like to go to a park or a golf course or a beach and have to step around all the goose poop and so on. So it's not necessarily the best bird for national bird. The Canada jay is also known affectionately as the camp robber. I love this. Tundra Comics is my favorite comics, and Chad Carpenter let me use this this cartoon for my talk here. And using the old name, the gray jay is best known by its more common name, camp robber. And it shows this bird here running out there with the guy in the tent barbecue, Swiss Army knife, and all kinds of stuff in total surprise. And yes, the Canada jay is indeed a feeder bird, but it all depends on where you live. Kent Liddell sent me this picture, and he's got an amazing backyard with dozens and dozens of feeders of all types. He lives on the outskirts, I think, of Edmonton or Canmore area. And so there, these birds do come into feeders. They don't come into feeders in Vancouver Island where I live, but people in the Maritimes also get them at the feeders. And so I'm going to use this opportunity to cut off a question that I'm probably going to get is, why don't we choose a bird that's really common that we can see in our backyards? And I'm telling you that it is found in our backyards in some places, but something, we could choose the northern cardinal, but it's the state bird in 7 cases. And I just don't think you could find another bird where you could come up with as many reasons, as many as 18 reasons why it would be a great bird for national bird. And I love this little poem that Colleen Rutherford Archer, she's a poetess from Ontario. She did this for the book I'll tell you about later, about the Canada jay. And she says, these smart birds found throughout the land will come and eat right from your hand. Sometimes called a campground robber, they cover food with preserving slobber and store as much as they can stash and dine in winter on their cash. Also, appearance is everything in my books. The Canada jay is not a very flamboyant looking bird. It's certainly not as pretty as an oriole or a northern cardinal. And I think this best represents the conservative, understated nature of Canadians. Also an easy bird for logo design, so our national government would be able to use it in logos all over the place very easily. And here's another important point. You're not likely to confuse this bird with any other Canadian bird. The only exceptions might be by some people would be Clark's nutcracker in the middle down there, but they only come into Canada in a very small part of their range in BC. And then also the loggerhead shrike, which is a highly endangered species and hard to find, and certainly in the east, they're down to about 20 to 30 pairs. But by and large, I think once people get to sort of get to know the Canada jay, they'll have no trouble recognizing it. Oh, and I want to point out, by the way, that I have had people telling me, what about the common raven? I mean, it's corvid and has lots of things, tough bird and so on, but it does tend to be more migratory. But I'm not going to get into that except to say that 99%, maybe 99.9% of Canadians can't tell the difference between a common raven and an American crow. And so you'd have people pointing at crows everywhere saying, hey, there's our national bird, which we can't have. The bird is adorably cute. And if you look at the fine print there, it says, yes, I know they eat eggs and nestlings like a lot of corvids do. But I think that's kind of it's just an opportunistic behavior showing their smarts and so on. I mean, nobody's perfect. They also have a strong conservation value. They finger very prominently in the boreal forest ecological zone, which constitute a huge portion of our country worthy of protection, but it's also under pressure from clear cutting and oil and gas development, among other things. It's very common in a lot of our provincial and federal parks, especially the ones that have boreal forest in them. And here's my argument, okay, about the backyard bird. Yes, it's not a bird that everybody sees in their backyards, but I think that it'll force Canadians to get off their duffs and away from Netflix and so on and get out there in our parks and out in our boreal forest to meet their bird. And I think also that the Canada jay will make a terrific poster child for climate change because it needs cold winter weather to keep the stored food from rotting. The population on Algonquin Park has been halved over the last few decades, according to Dan Strickland and others, because of climate changing and the fact that some of their food in those storage places rots if they have a very, very mild winter. So this is going to make us work harder to fight climate warming. In short, one couldn't find a more Canadian bird than the Canada jay. And the final vote tally of that contest was, and you'll see some asterisks there, I'll explain in a minute, common loon, and I knew that bird would win. 14,000 votes almost. The snowy owl came in second. We were unable to displace it with the gray jay / whiskey jack / Canada jay, which had 7,900 votes roughly. Canada goose surprised me with 3,600 votes in fourth place, and the black-capped chickadee, 3,300 votes roughly. Now the asterisks, I've already told you the common loon is the official bird of Ontario, and the snowy owl is the official bird of Quebec. And I don't think those birds should have even been candidates in the contest in the first place, or the black-capped chickadee, because they're already taken. Also, the common loon and the snowy owl were both voted by provinces with the highest populations in our country. But I think there might have been a little bit of a bias there. And I also think that if you see, I've underlined gray jay. If we'd had the name changed to Canada jay, I'll bet you any money that the gray jay or the Canada jay would have been probably at least in second spot and breathing down the neck of the loon. And the winner that was chosen by the Royal Canadian Geographical Society was not the one with the most votes. It was the gray jay at the time. And they had a magazine cover saying our new national bird, the gray jay. And so I was excited as anything. I thought, oh my God, the federal government is going to take note of this, and it's almost a done deal that we're going to have it as our national bird. Boy, was I ever wrong. And so here's what happened. And I'll be a little crass here. The loon shit hit the fan, essentially. The Ottawa Citizen published this cartoon by Patrick LaMontagne, basically saying, get ready, kid, here comes the outrage, because loon fans, most of them from Ontario, but even other places, thought it was very unfair that the bird with the most votes didn't win. And so in other words, due democratic process didn't take place. And essentially very unhappy. And so a couple of things. It took us a while to figure this out, but anybody who kept on approaching Minister of Heritage Minister in the federal government for the Liberals at the time, basically got an official letter back saying that we have no plans at this time to adopt any new national symbols. It was basically a same letter to everyone. And so we found out later on that the federal government had nothing to do with the contest, which was a mistake. They should have been brought in right from the get-go because they like to do their own thing. And secondly, they also, as a government, believe in due democratic process. And so they didn't like the fact that all of this controversy came up. So what's the next step? We do need to get the feds to buy in. A lot of Canadians do think today that the Canada jay is our national bird, but we need to make this an official thing by the federal government. And so when Canada had its 150th birthday in 2017, I thought for sure that was going to do the job, that they were going to make an announcement saying, hey, we're going to make this a national bird. But it came and went, and I got all these phone calls from CBC, CTV, newspapers saying, hey, how come the federal government's not doing anything about this? And essentially, they were when the media contacted the government, they said, the federal government has no plans at this time to adopt any new English national symbols. And then we had a huge conference in Vancouver in 2018, next year, called the International Ornithological Congress. it was attended by thousands of ornithologists from all over the world. And there were lots of federal politicians there. And I thought for sure they were going to make an announcement there, but it also came and went. And then we got the name changed back to the Canada Jay. And I thought for sure that's going to do it. But again, just nothing but silence from the federal government. So we started up a website, and it's very easy to find. It's just all you have to do is remember CanadaJ, all one word, .org, and you can go there. And we're still working on the website. It's we've got a lot of it translated into French, but we're still working on getting all of it. You can go there and click on the petition and sign the petition and tell your friends to do that. I'll come back to that later on. And my essay on why Canada needs a national bird and the now 18 reasons why. The 18th reason was the fact that I think having the Canada Jay as our national bird is going to force Canadians to get out there and enjoy our parks and get off their duffs and be more healthy. And so that's the 18th reason. And so we did that. And then Royal Canadian Geographic Society and their magazine Canadian Geographic came up with a second cover about a little more than a year ago with a lovely article all about the Canada Jay by Julia Zarankin, and basically saying, meet our national bird. And this is, again, contributing to the fact that Canadians do believe this is our bird. And so what to do next? So I got together with 7 other authors, including Dan Strickland, Ryan Norris, who is the other expert on this species in Canada, University of Guelph, Alain Goulet, who owns a nature store in Montreal, Aaron Kiley, who is the editor of Canadian Geographic magazine, Marc Majoine, who I mentioned earlier, the First Nations guy, Michel Gazelin, who's been stumping for the Canada Jay in Quebec, and Colleen Archer, who's that poet. And we have written a book. It's all done. It's ready to go. It's a beautiful little book, very colorful, lots of pretty pictures, and really a really nice treatise on this species and why it should be our national bird. But you'll notice the question mark is there. And this is being published by Hancock House Publishers out of Surrey, BC. They're not doing it for any profit whatsoever. In fact, nobody in the book, none of the people that have contributed photographs or any writing or whatever, is getting a dime from this book. All the profits, if there are any, are going to go to bird conservation, like the Birds Canada and the Society for Canadian Ornithologists, both of which have endorsed this bird. And so the official launch date of this book is going to be Earth Day, April 22nd, 2022. We're still, the publisher, Miles Lamont, is looking for, he may have settled on a publisher now, a printer, I should say, to get the book together for us. And the back cover endorsements include Stephen Price, who's the emeritus president of Birds Canada, Quebec Oiseaux, which is a huge support from the province of Quebec, Nature Conservancy Canada, another great organization helping save our parks and or save habitat for wildlife in Canada, the Society of Canadian Ornithologists, David Sibley, we wanted to get an American support in there, and David Sibley is very well known with his field guides, and Rick Hansen, a big Canadian guy with Man in Motion Foundation. Everybody knows him too. So they're on the back of cover of the book. Our current plans are to use that website I showed you to secure endorsements from organizations and well-known Canadians across Canada, as well as signatures on a petition or two I mentioned, because there is another petition that we could start up. It's actually the official House of Parliament petition, but unfortunately it can only stay up for essentially 4 months. And so I don't want to fire that bullet off yet until we get close to maybe some interest by the federal government. Senator Diane Griffin is in her last year of her term before retirement, is also very interested in helping us, and she plans to put forth either a motion or inquiry on the Senate floor after the books come out. And then we had this latest election for, I don't want to go into whether we should have had one or not, but it was something I sort of expected, but not everybody expected, but nothing changed. The Liberals didn't get their majority government, so we still have this this kind of a minority government with everybody sort of pitching in. Might not be a bad thing. I've been told that a majority Liberal government would have been the best, because they would have said, okay, great, now we've got our majority, we've got another 4 years, let's do something nice for Canadians. Let's get a national bird. On the other hand, maybe having all 4 parties, the Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP and the Green Party all getting together and unanimously in doing this would be a great thing too. And then, of course, COVID hit last year, and this really complicated things. There's no way that we could put pressure on the federal government to have a national bird installed when people were dying from this disease, still are, and also suffering serious financial hardships. This is much more of a frivolous thing. So, but there will be some time in the future. So we're kind of shooting for another Canada Day, but maybe 2022. But now that we have this new variant out there, I suspect that by the time next July is around, we're still going to have COVID with us and a lot of effort being made by the federal government. So I don't think it'll happen then, but maybe 2023. I'm going to keep working on this till the day I die. It's going to happen somehow, one way or the other. And so this is the last section of the book that I'm going to share with you. Here are some things that we Canadians can do to help the effort. First of all, buy the book. It's only going to be sold for somewhere between $12 and $15. Gift it to your friends, and even better, give a copy to your local federal member of parliament and any influential folks you might know. If you're good friends with Ryan Reynolds or even David Suzuki or anybody like that, then help us out. Contact your local federal member of parliament by email or telephone, or even better, in person, and let them know that you'd like to see the Canada Jay officially recognized as our national bird, and as soon as possible. Venture outdoors to your nearest boreal forest, whether it be a national or provincial park or a ski mountain, and seek out this bird to see how beautiful and friendly these birds truly are, and to appreciate the magnificent habitat that they live in. Introduce your children and your grandchildren, or any kids for that matter, to this bird, and don't forget to bring along your camera or your smartphone for a photograph that you and they will never forget. Make a donation to a favorite local, national, and or international organization that's committed to saving Canada's boreal forest, conserving our birds, protecting our national and provincial parks, and or fighting climate warming. And for those of you that are lucky enough to entertain Canada Jays at your backyard feeders, make sure that your feeders are clean and filled with fresh food and safe from window strikes and predation by cats, hawks, and owls. Also, visit the Canada Jay website. I'll say it again, it's CanadaJ, all one word, .org. Sign the petition, get it sent around to your other friends and so on to get them to do likewise. And if you are some sort of celebrity in the audience today, or some sort of influential person, then please consider taking that petition a step further and provide visiting the website one step further and sign the petition and provide an endorsement quote to me that I can put on the website. And if you're a member of a stakeholder organization with strong roots in Canada, you don't have to be nature related. It could be the mining organization or forestry organization of Canada, whatever. Convince your organization to write a letter of endorsement. I can provide a template if you need one, which can be put on the website, but also sent to federal politicians. They're going to be very interested to know that all Canadians want this bird and not just nature people. Use your local print and electronic media in whatever way you can. Could be a letter to a newspaper, phone call to a radio station, article in a magazine, or a blog, or a podcast on the internet. And also use social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram to promote the Canada Jay as our national bird. Hashtags are Canada Jay and national bird, very easy to remember. And if you're a federal politician, whether you're serving in the ruling party or not, I don't know if you're, I think we've got one in the audience anyway, then please do everything in your political power to officially inaugurate the Canada Jay, truly the most Canadian bird, as our country's newest national symbol. I'm going to add this little thing in here because I have had people tell me about hand feeding. Is that a good thing? And so I've talked to Dan Strickland about that, who knows this bird really well. And here's his biological take on that question. It is a very pleasurable campsite or trailside activity and often inspires a love for nature, especially among kids. And his experiments in Algonquin Park have showed that winter food supplements in the form of these handouts lead to not only more, but healthier nestlings. They normally, eat semi-rotten, bacteria-ridden bits of raw vertebrate flesh, insects, spiders, berries, and fungi in all various stages of decay, partly due to winter thaws. So the odd handout of a bit of cheese, no matter how bad it is, raisins or dog kibble, is not going to cause any harm to these birds. And in fact, getting these handouts has become part of their ecology. And then I'm going to leave you off this lovely painting for the book by Barry Kent Mackay, a very famous Canadian painter living in Ontario. And I happen to have the original in my home. He was very kind to sell it to me. And it's a beautiful picture of a family of Canada jays. And I won't go through all of these, but these are acknowledgements. Everybody from Dick Cannings, who is big, he's a member of our team. Elizabeth May, it took me 5 minutes to convince Elizabeth that this bird should be our national bird. And I've mentioned some of the others and so on. So thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to any debate or challenges, questions, or whatever.
Adam, you're muted.
I could just keep talking and no one would hear me. Thanks a lot, Dr. Bird, David, for taking time out of your evening to make a very passionate case for the Canada Jay. I think you win in a debate.
We all win. We all win, Adam. We all win.
There's nobody here with to defend the loon or the or any of the other birds on the list. So well done. What was it that got you so interested in birds? I mean, very clearly passionate about the Canada Jay, but I'm assuming it starts with just a general love for watching birds. And
that's a good question, and I have a very easy answer for it. It's my favorite bird is not the Canada Jay. My favorite bird is the gyrfalcon, which happens to be the provincial bird for, I think, the Yukon and or Northwest Territories, one of those two. Anyway, that's my favorite because I'm a bird of prey guy. I've studied birds of prey all my life. And for most of that life, I was not even a bird watcher. I was a guy who loved hawks, and every other bird out there was hawk food. And so what got me sort of interested in birds in general, though, was, and I'm a big time bird watcher. I'm not one of the best bird watchers out there. I'm not like David Sibley, but I know how to do it. And it was actually seeing an Anna's hummingbird doing a display, a male Anna's hummingbird doing a display with its neon pink gorget down in Arizona. And I had been writing a column for the Montreal Gazette for years, and even one of those columns was on stomping for the Canada Jay as a national bird. And I came back after that trip down to Arizona and said, announced to my readers that I didn't want to be a raptor bigot anymore. I was going to like all birds, even pigeons and starlings and so on. And so that's sort of how I got involved in birds in general. And, to me, this is just such a no-brainer to have this bird as our national bird. 18 reasons that you can't find another bird in Canada, even for the loon or anything, that for a bird that's not, and it's not even taken yet either. It's there, it's available. So anyway.
So one of the things that we do, David, is we encourage the people who join us for these Voices of Saanich and the Gulf Islands presentations to make a contribution. Of course, we always encourage people to make contributions to the Riding Association, but we also want to make this more than just about the political organization. We want, and this evening, I believe you chose the Rocky Point Bird Conservation. Yep. What's the official name of it? I only have Rocky Point in here.
Rocky Point Bird Observatory. They do a lot of banding of owls in the fall, but many other birds as well. And it's one of its big time promoters is Anne Nightingale, very aptly named bird watcher. To me, the best bird watcher on Vancouver Island in my books, anyway. She's a mentor of mine. Helps me out a lot. She's helped me out a lot, and she, of course, is on Team Canada Jay as well. And so to me, it wasn't even the birds of prey thing. It's just I mean, there are other great organizations in the Vancouver Island area and the Gulf Islands and so on. But to me, I think Rocky Point's doing a great job every year in all the work they do, and Nightingale as well. And I think it's apt that people support them.
We've just got it. Paul has just dropped the link in, and I think my memory serves me correctly, I think you're the second person that's chosen Rocky Point as an organization to make a contribution to. So for anybody who's watching and you're passionate about passionate about this, you can make a small contribution. There's a link in the chat. If you have a question, you can drop it in the Q&A. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to turn cameras on or microphones on. So if you have a question for Dr. Bird, you can just put it in the Q&A below, or in the Q&A. It's below on my screen, but it is could be somewhere else on your screen. So just in terms of on the Saanich Peninsula here, one of the organizations that does a great job of keeping birds front and center is the Shoal Harbor group. Bob Peart and a bunch of others. Actually, I'm not going to start naming names because then I'll forget some. But the Bufflehead is one I go every. I think just a couple of weeks ago I was in Roberts Bay celebrating the return of the Bufflehead. That bird is fairly well known to the Saanich Peninsula here. I was happy to see that it was on the list as well of potential for a national bird.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who studies it, the duck guy. He lives in that area. I'm embarrassed to say I'm having a senior moment here about remembering his name, but anyway, he and I had a fun debate at one of the Shoal Bay meetings about. He basically challenged me and said, "Well, I think the Bufflehead would be a great bird." But I don't think he could come up with 18 reasons why that would be our national bird. And again, I think that some Canadians would probably be opposed to the idea of having a bird that gets shot, especially Buffleheads are kind of cute looking too. And I think they're neat birds, but I think the Bufflehead would be a great official bird for the Gulf Islands. I know it's on the coat of arms for Sydney, but I think it would be a wonderful bird. Like an official bird for the Gulf Islands. If it could be used somehow to promote the conservation of the Gulf Islands, it'd be great.
So there is a question here about Steller's jay, Canada jay. We got the blue jay. I think a cardinal is also looks very similar, but red. Can you maybe provide a little bit more about how these birds are related to each other, and just to clarify for people how they relate to each other?
Yeah, the Steller's jay, which is actually the official bird for British Columbia, it narrowly beat out the peregrine falcon for that honor, and it's very closely related to the Canada jay, the blue jay, Steller's jay, Canada jay, and I'm trying to think. There's also the magpies and the American crow. And the common raven are all members of the corvid family, the crow family. And as such, if you pick up any bird book, like an official bird book, say listing the birds of Canada or birds of North America, whatever, you'll find all of those birds in the same group of pages together, because they're very, very closely related phylogenetically, meaning they have a lot of similar things, including smarts and so on. It's just that the bird that is the friendliest and has adopted this strategy of coming to people's hands and so on and begging for food is the Canada jay. Steller's jays come into my backyard occasionally in my feeders, but they are very wary birds, as are blue jays. But you can get blue jays to come and take peanuts in the shell out of your hand. But I'm not aware anybody's done it with Steller's jays, but maybe no one's tried.
Certainly doesn't have the problem that the Canada goose has. It's I think our friends to the south of us, well, to the north of you now, but to the south of us here in Victoria, certainly have a bad reputation in the United States, the Canada goose, and as well, I mean, I think of a growing residency, a resident population of Canada geese as well, staying year round. Maybe talk, I know that a number of the people on the call here are going to be interested in terms of, you raised it briefly, but maybe talk about the impact of climate change on the Canada jay, and perhaps highlight a little bit maybe the opportunity that is presented for us as Canada's climate is changing. Is one of, we are unfortunately seeing a depletion in biodiversity. loss of biodiversity, I should say, and the impact that climate change will have on this bird.
Well, let me just very briefly tell you how climate change is affecting birds in general, all through like North America, throughout the world for that matter, in terms of migratory birds. Because as I said, the Canada jay is not a migratory bird, and it's been affected in a different way, which I'll reiterate a little later on. But in terms of birds that migrate, a lot of birds are actually expanding their ranges north, like the northern cardinal, the mourning dove, tufted titmouse, great egret. I can name several other species. Are all now a lot of those are all now officially Canadian birds and so on, but they didn't used to be. But as the climate warms up, the further north you go, these birds are moving further and further north, and their range is expanding northward. And the other thing that's happening is that the birds are getting out of sync with their food supplies. For example, they are arriving earlier in the spring because of climate warming, and that can be a bad thing because these birds have adapted their lives to arriving and raising their young at when there's a lot of food up there. For example, it could be American kestrels, for example, having their young fledge when there's grasshoppers out there. But if they arrive earlier and that gets out of whack, then they can cause some severe problems for them. And other things, of course, are all of the terrible weather systems that we're getting, the extreme weather systems that are a result of climate change. Everything from wildfires burning up habitat and burning up food sources for migrating birds, hurricanes blowing birds off course, all sorts of things. It's almost like running the gauntlet for a bird to migrate south and even north. Now, as I mentioned, the Canada jay is a non-migratory bird, and really the main way that bird's going to be affected by climate change, and something for us to keep an eye on, in fact, it is being studied, is the fact that they need to have cold Canadian winters, and so their food doesn't rot in those hiding locations. And they have thousands of food items, and they can remember where almost all of them are. But if the winters get really, really warm and you don't have cold temperatures, the food rots. And so when they go to use it to feed their young or whatever, or feed themselves during the winter weather, then that's a problem for them because they can't, go digging around in the snow for if there's even snow there, to find food items. It's really a bit of a complex topic, but that is a fact. What's happened to the Algonquin park birds, the population there, which has been studied for decades, has now been halved because of climate change, according to the latest papers that have come out.
These birds are remarkable. Okay, so we have and I want to make sure that I have the name of the artist correctly. We have a calendar. Sorry, I don't have this right in front of me. Tex is going to drop it. There we go. Okay.
Yep.
Tex, do you want to talk about this? So here's a calendar. It is, who's the artist? You're muted, Tex. You're muted, Tex.
These are Vancouver Island photographers, Adam. They're actual photographs.
Awesome.
And there are two. And what turns out that Spirit Coast Art is in Saanich, and the hummingbirds is a Victoria photographer, and the owls is all Vancouver Island photographers. So Paul's going to put their address in the website, because if you're thinking of a beautiful calendar, if you're still using paper calendars and loving having some beautiful pictures, you'll want to go and take a look at these two. And then we're also supporting photographers and a local business, which is pretty cool. So
you can win one of these as a door prize if you put your birth date and month in the chat. I believe what we'll do is we'll pick the one that's closest to David's birthday. Is that correct?
That's it.
So David, you have to keep the date and month. We won't ask you for the year, but the date and month in the chat, and the person who is close enough, the closest, will win a calendar. Dave Charles asks Dr. Bird, Dave Charles asks about the impact of microplastics on
I
birds.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any?
I've just learned about those things in the last year or so, microplastics. And, I was just in a big grocery store in downtown La Paz and was watching all these people walking out with these great big, huge cartons of those plastic bottles of water. It drives me crazy because I know where they're going to end up. I see them on the roads out here and in the water and so on, all over the world for that matter. And I know that microplastics are being absorbed into birds' digestive systems, for example. I know that they can cause larger pieces of plastic, can cause blockages in the intestines and so on. But microplastics are a bit of a different thing. And that's probably a question I'm going to address one of these days in one of my podcasts for Brome Bird News. I should point that out that every 2 weeks, I star as the scientific authority in a show called Brome Bird News. It's free. And all you have to do is just Google Brome Bird News, BROME. And you can even see the archived ones as well. And every 2 weeks it's on, and I do basically a report on something aspect of birds, as well as I answer a question. And that would be a good question for the person who asked that question to send me an email, and I will answer that in a podcast for them. And my email address is very simple. It's david.bird@mcgill.ca. Do I have to,
That's
Adam,
Brome Bird News.
yeah, Adam, do I have to put my birth date in that chat for this to work? Because I think the text knows what it is.
Okay, so I think we're getting to the end now. I see a few, and you have let's say 10 seconds. If you haven't put your birth date in to the chat, you got 10 seconds to do it. Looks like we've got everyone's birthday that's gonna put theirs in the chat. Tex, what is the date of David's birthday?
You're testing in my memory. It's April 23rd, and I just went and checked it out. So I think Paul just sent a note saying it looks like it's Mary Leslie.
Mary Leslie.
And
Congratulations.
You forgot the year, Tex, 1968. Just kidding. 1949.
We realized that both he and I share the same year. So Mary, send some details, send an email or get in touch with the office, and we'll get you a calendar. David has chosen the Owls calendar, and we have one for Adam's office. So we purchased 3 from Sanra for the purpose of a gift, door prize, gift for David. And David, that was
Thank you very much.
David, when we were chatting in and around this, you had mentioned, and I asked if it was okay if I mentioned it to the group tonight. You had mentioned you were thinking of inviting folks to come up and do a bird walk with you when you're back from Mexico, and I think you're going to Ontario as well or something.
Well, I'm going to the UK, as a matter of fact, a little further than Ontario. I have a second grandchild being born over there at the beginning of March.
Good one. So what you had said was that you would let folks know, and perhaps you can do that. What will you do that through your website? But your idea was 20, 25 people go for a walk, and just in the back in your area, which is Curtis Point up by the ferry.
Yeah, essentially, the idea for that came from what I do down here in Baja. I started up the Baja Birding Club, and I just did my first birding walk only 3 days ago. And essentially, I just there's no charge at all. I just simply make an announcement, and I got to figure out how I'm going to get the word out for that. But I know I can go through the, North Saanich Council, or the center that they have. They have ways of reaching people, and I'm just simply going to say that we're going to meet at such and such a place at such and such a time and day, and I'll probably do them maybe every couple of weeks, as long as I'm in town, because now that I've got grandchildren, being one in Fernie and one overseas, that might make things a little harder for me to be around a lot. But I'm going to give it a shot. I was going to do it last year, but COVID stopped it, and I've had as many as 45 people down here, but I must say that getting that many people is a lot of people to be walking around looking at birds, especially with COVID still around. So we'll see how it works out, but I'm definitely going to do it.
Thank you. And so watch for it. And David, maybe you can send me a note and we'll just
Sure, I
remind
will.
folks as
I'll
we
keep
get
you in touch.
closer.
Yeah. Someone
happy
asked where I am, by the way. I'm about 45 minutes from La Paz in two twin villages called El Sargento, which is where I live, and La Ventana. They're very famous for kiteboarding and windsurfing, and there's a lot of Canadians here, a lot of Canadian gringos here.
And
Very
you
cool.
drive down, which I thought was kind of interesting.
What was that? Sorry?
You drive down as well.
Yeah, it takes 2 nights in the States and 2 nights in the Baja Peninsula to get here. It's a bit of a haul, but you know, when you're married to somebody for almost 50 years, like my wife, she's a pleasure to travel with, and it just makes it easier and so on. And I enjoy looking at the scenery.
Good one. Thank you.
Migrating the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I'm afraid I never thought I'd be a snowbird. You know, I never expected to own a place down here. I look upon owning a cottage as like owning a second home, which is a lot of work. I can barely keep on top of the one that I have up in Curtis Point. But you know, what's neat about down here is that, of course, there's all the sunshine. There's 26 degrees almost every day. But there's a lot of expats here, like a lot of gringos here, Canadians, and it's easier to make friends down here and get together with people here than it is up in Vancouver Island. Doesn't mean people are not friendly up there. It's just that it's harder to get together with people. And that's part of the reason why I want to start up the North Saanich Birding Club, is to try and get people together. And more importantly, what I want to do is to create new birders, people who support birds and conservation. That's my main goal. Every new person that comes out, the happier I'll be.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking an hour out of your 26-degree vacation or day, and really appreciate it. I'm going to turn my camera off. I really thank you for sharing information with us. Over to you, Tex. I think you've got a bit of an announcement to make, and then we'll go from there.
Good one. Thank you, David, once again.
Thank you.
Adam just went off camera, but in fact, come January 25th, Adam has asked that we host a Voices of the Forest Protectors. And Adam, I was wondering if you'd just share with folks what your idea was around that particular evening, because I think it's going to be a really special evening. And by the way, you may not know this yet, but Lorna Crozier is going to join us that evening as well.
Cool. Well, I just, one of the things that, one of the issues that I'm consistently hearing from our constituents here in Saanich North and the islands is about old growth protection, habitat, and biodiversity. And we've just had, over the last summer, we've had the largest act of civil disobedience in Canadian history, just next door to us over on southern Vancouver Island, on the west coast of southern Vancouver Island. And there's a lot of people from Saanich North and the islands that have chosen to go out there, and people from all ages and all walks of life. And I've been hearing from those folks, sharing the stories with me about why they chose to go and be a part of that action. And I'm not going to pretend like Saanich North and the Islands was more well represented out there than any other riding might be. However, I happen to feel that that a lot of Saanich North and the Islanders found their way out there this past summer. And so I suggested that we invite some of them to come and have a conversation or a series of brief conversations, and just be asking the question, why was it that you chose to go out and be a part of that action? And I think we've got a fairly diverse group of people that should provide a fairly diverse group of stories, including, as you've just noted, Lorna Crozier, who went out there and wrote a poem. We had, John Kidder, Elizabeth May's husband, went out. He wrote a song. So, there's a lot that's come out of that. And I just thought that it would be interesting to hear those stories.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. So we've got our next Voices of Saanich booked for January 25th. We'll be in touch with everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you especially to David for making time.
Take care, guys.
Sometimes I got to chase people around. David got in touch and he said, if you need a speaker, I'd love to talk about the Canada Jay. So David, thank you for making it easy to get you involved and for sticking with us, even though you're down on your some winter vacation. All the best, everyone. Thank you very much. Bye for now.